The wedding was supposed to be her fairy tale, right in the middle of her vows. Lydia stopped. The minister turned toward 200 guests and shouted my name like an accusation, as if I'd just walked in holding a smoking gun. Forks clattered. Heads spun. A whisper swept the tent. Is Harold here? I wasn't. I was thousands of miles away in Lisbon, sipping cheap Portuguese coffee on a balcony overlooking the Teagus River. But in that moment, back in Rockford, I became the ghost in the room, the villain in their story. They all thought I'd ruined her day. No, Lydia had been sprinting toward ruin long before I ever left. My name is Harold Whitman. I'm 54, born and raised in Rockford, Illinois, where the days move slow, gossip moves fast, and predictability is both a virtue and a curse. For 25 years, I was a loan officer at Tri-State Credit Union, steady, reliable, the kind of man you could set a clock by. Lydia used to call me a routine with legs. She wanted excitement. She found it in a man named Travis Hale. Travis was 46, tan, and polished in a way that suggested more time spent on appearances than on balance sheets. He called himself an entrepreneur, which around here often translates to unsteady income. Lydia talked about him with the breathless thrill of a teenager. She called him her new beginning. The last time she called me predictable was the same week I discovered Travis had 2 bankruptcies and an arrest warrant in Nevada. Predictable men read the fine print. Adventure-seeking men, it seems, often skip it. I didn't fight the divorce. In Illinois, when both parties agree, it slides through fast. She took her things and called our house a shoebox for a man with no imagination. I kept the shoebox. It kept out the wind. But I made sure the separation was airtight. Every account closed. Every thread cut. A legal wall built so stout you could shelter a Midwest tornado behind it. It was boring, meticulous work, my first quiet victory. When the papers were signed, I felt a clean, heavy silence, the kind you only learn to cherish after 50, when the air is no longer thick with sighs or the tension of eggshells underfoot. 3 weeks later, Lisbon called. A 1-year contract to train a lone team overseas. They wanted someone steady. I took it. Lisbon was a city of hills and light. My apartment was small, but each morning the sun turned the river to gold. I breathed in the newness and let the past peel away like old paint. For a while, I didn't think of Lydia at all. Then a text came through from an old neighbor, a photo of Lydia and Travis beaming like lottery winners. She's getting married Saturday. I studied the picture in a sunlit cafe. There was Lydia in a dress too white for a divorce finalized 3 months prior. Travis beside her, looking like he'd rented his confidence along with his suit. The comments below were a chorus of Rockford gossip. She finally upgraded. True love wins. I set the phone down and took a slow sip of coffee. Predictable men have quiet advantages. We notice what others overlook. And while everyone saw Lydia, perfect new beginning, I saw the cracks in the foundation. Travis wasn't the fairy tale, he was the fine print. And Lydia, whether she knew it or not, was running headlong toward a cliff. I wasn't going to the wedding. That wasn't my style. But I also knew that with a man like Travis at the altar, the truth wouldn't need much encouragement to step into the light. It just needed a nudge. And predictable old Harold had already set one in motion weeks before she'd chosen her dress. 2 days before the wedding, I landed back in Rockford. The Midwest settled over me like a familiar coat, the flat vowels, the '09 windbreaker, the instinct to hold doors for strangers who wouldn't thank you. At Tri-State, my keycard still worked. They never deactivate them quickly. Mrs. Kowalski, the teller who's known every financial secret in town for 38 years, pulled me into the break room. That Hale fellow, she whispered, eyes wide. Last month he applied for 6 credit cards. 6. All denied. Then he asked for a $10,000 loan. She leaned closer. Harold, that man's drowning, and your ex is tying herself to the anchor. I thanked her and left. The information wasn't new, but the confirmation was solid. That evening, a thick, embossed envelope waited on my sister's porch. Inside, a wedding invitation and a handwritten note from Lydia. Closure matters, Harold. It would mean a lot if you saw what true happiness looks like. I almost smiled. Lydia always had a flair for lines she didn't fully understand. I didn't plan to attend, but I did prepare 2 packages that night. One for the best man, A Bears fan who'd friended me years back. One for Aunt Jolene. Lydia's loud, unfiltered, and gloriously nosy aunt, who never met a truth she didn't feel compelled to share. Each contained a simple, unadorned collection of documents: Travis's bankruptcy filings, the Nevada warrant, screenshots of messages to other women, a debt summary totaling $187,000. Paper, I've learned, speaks louder than gossip. The morning of the wedding, I sat on my sister's porch with a black coffee, listening to cicadas groan in the humidity. A text came through from an unknown number, a photo of the tent at St. Joseph's, Lydia glowing near the altar. The caption read, "Showtime." I set the phone down. Back under that billowing tent, the air smelled of hydrangeas and pulled pork. Travis sweated through his rented tux, eyes darting like a man watching for debt collectors, and in the second row, Aunt Jolene sat with my packet half protruding from her purse, papers sharp as truth. When the ceremony began, Lydia walked down the aisle wearing that practiced, triumphant smile, the one that said, "Look at me now." She'd just reached Travis when Jolene stood, not slowly, not politely. She rose like a judge entering a courtroom, champagne glass held high. "I have a question." Her voice cut through the soft music. Then she turned, not to the couple, but to the crowded seats. "Does anybody here know the groom is wanted in Nevada?" The silence was absolute. The minister froze. Lydia's smile didn't fade so much as shatter. And that's when the minister spun toward the guests and shouted my name into the quiet, as if I were there, pulling the strings. But I was just a man on a balcony, miles away, watching a river turn to gold. The storm they felt wasn't of my making. I'd simply handed them the weather report. Lydia didn't ruin her wedding day. She'd simply chosen a man who was a thundercloud in a rented tux. And all I did was give someone an umbrella and someone else a microphone. Yes, she'd brought one, and she cleared her throat. What follows is what half of Rockford heard by sundown. Lydia Ann Whitman. Jolene's voice didn't ask for attention, it commanded it. Every head in the tent snapped toward the sound. 200 people held their breath. "You sure you want to marry a man who owes $187,000? The gasp was a collective thing, sharp and dry like paper tearing. Before it could settle, Jolene fired the second shot. "And who still lives in his cousin's basement?" Silence, a heavy, airless quiet where even the distant lawnmowers seemed to cut out. Guests froze mid-fan, mid-whisper. A child's dropped plastic cup rolled unheeded across the grass. The minister lowered his booklet slowly, as if the words had evaporated from the page. And Lydia went still. Not the stillness of shock, but of collapse in progress. The color drained from her face, leaving behind the stark white of a stage curtain after the play ends. Her mouth opened, closed, soundless. Travis didn't wait for the third question. He didn't deny, or explain, or even look at Lydia. He simply turned and ran, a frantic, stumbling bolt down the side aisle, past the buffet table of pulled pork, past a teen usher frozen with a basket of petals, and out through the tent flap like a man fleeing a burning building. The spell broke into chaos. Is this real? Did Harold, who lives in a basement at 46, someone film this? Lydia jolted back to life. Her bouquet hit the ground. Travis, come back. But her feet stayed rooted. Instead, her hand dove into the folds of her dress, emerging with her phone. Of course. She dialed me. I was in my sister's living room, steadying a shelf for Mike, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Lydia's name glowed on the screen. I let it ring twice, not for drama, but for the simple, quiet acknowledgement that I no longer jumped when she called. Harold. Her voice was a tight wire of fury. "Where are you?" "In Rockford," I said, calm, flat. "A winter lake." "Did you do this? Did you send something to Jolene?" I leaned against the wall, my eyes resting on a framed photo of my niece in her marching band uniform, smiling, fearless. "You invited me, Lydia. You wanted me to see what real happiness looks like." I paused. "Looks like everyone got a show." A crash echoed down the line, metal folding, something hollow breaking. "You ruined my wedding." "No," I said, and let the word hang in the quiet of my sister's living room. I didn't ruin a thing. The truth was simpler. Lydia had been building her house on sand long before I mailed the tide schedule. I just didn't warn her when the water was coming in. I didn't expect to see her again before my flight. After a spectacle like that, I figured she'd hide at her sister's, maybe, or in the very basement Travis had just vacated. But Lydia has always been bold in her devastation. The next morning, I went to Bay's family diner, my booth by the window, coffee, black, eggs, scrambled, toast, wheat. The world outside kept its gentle, predictable rhythm. The bell above the door jingled like an alarm. She stood there, still in yesterday's dress, the lace now wrinkled, the white looking tired under the fluorescent lights. Her eyes were raw. She saw me, and she marched. Harold. My name was an accusation. Morning. Lydia. You sent it. You sent those papers to Jolene. Our waitress, Linda, paused mid-pour. Everything all right, sweetheart? Just talking, I said. Lydia slid into the booth uninvited. You humiliated me, in front of everyone, my parents, my church. Do you understand? I took a slow sip. The coffee was bitter, just how I liked it. I understand you're upset. Upset? I was left at the altar in a tent. People filmed it. Harold, it's online. It's everywhere. Around us, the diner performed its quiet ballet of not listening. Forks hovered. Newspapers didn't turn. When her breath hitched, I asked the only question that mattered. Why did you come here, Lydia? The fury in her eyes flickered, drowned by something older and colder, loneliness. It always finds its way to the surface. He promised me things, she whispered, her voice breaking. A company, travel, a life. He said whatever I needed to hear. She looked down at her hands, still clutching her phone like a lifeline. You just let me walk away, like I didn't matter. There it was, the unspoken contract of our ending. She wanted to be the one who got away, not the one who was let go. You made your choice, I said, my voice low. A long time ago. A tear tracked through her smudged makeup. Can we start over? Just talk. Maybe try again? I set my cup down. The ceramic click was soft but final. I leaned forward. Just enough. Lydia, I said, so quietly she had to strain to hear. You didn't leave me for a better man. You left me for a better story. I let that sit between us. In the space once filled by wedding plans and shared mornings. Turns out the story was fiction. And now you're holding the bill. Her face crumpled, not into tears, but into a dawning, awful clarity. The diner held its breath. Then I reached into my jacket. I placed a simple, legal-sized folder on the formica between us. What's that? She asked, voice thin. More of Travis's lies? No, I said, sliding it toward her. This one's about me. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The first page was a closing statement. Numbers in clean columns. The house, I said, the one you called a shoebox, remember? She stared. I finished the basement, put in the deck you always wanted, redid the kitchen. I watched her eyes scan down to the bottom line. Sold it last month. After taxes, I paused. $312,000. A small, choked sound escaped her. It's already deposited, I continued, my voice even, in a Portuguese bank. In an account with only one name on it. She slammed the folder shut, pressing her palms over it as if she could erase the numbers by force. You sold it, she breathed. You didn't tell me. It wasn't yours to know about. I slid out of the booth. I laid a $10 bill beside my plate, enough for the meal and Linda's kindness. As I stood, Lydia's hand shot out, grasping my wrist. Her touch was cold, desperate. Harold, please, don't leave like this. I gently freed my arm. I already left. Lydia, you just didn't notice until now. The bell jingled as I stepped out into the morning. Through the window, I saw her alone in the booth, the folder before her like a headstone for a future that never was. Outside, the air smelled of cut grass and distant rain. I took a deep breath. And for the first time in 27 years, I felt the quiet, unshakable freedom of a man who has finally closed his own book.